Sitting in their cozy but slightly worn-out living room, Mark leaned back into his recliner, sighing as he stared at a pile of bills on the coffee table. Across from him, Linda folded laundry, her face tight with concern. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice hesitant. Mark rubbed his temples. "Let me guess. Another expense?" Linda nodded. "Emily's rent is due, and she's still struggling to find a stable job. Jason called earlier. His car broke down again. He's asking if we can help cover the repairs." Mark exhaled, his jaw tightening. Their children, now in their late 20s, were good kids, hard-working, kind, and trying their best in a tough economy. But they were still financially dependent, a burden Mark and Linda hadn't anticipated at this stage in life. "Linda, we're supposed to be saving for retirement. Instead, we're still paying for rent, car repairs, and who knows what else," Mark said, frustration creeping into his tone. "When does it stop?" Linda's eyes softened. "They're our kids, Mark. We can't just turn our backs on them." As the weeks went by, the financial strain began to take its toll, not just on their wallets, but on their marriage. Mark had always been a provider, working long hours to ensure his family never went without. But now, he felt exhausted, unappreciated. The long talks he once enjoyed with Linda turned into tense debates about money. The dinners they used to cherish together felt heavier, weighed down by financial worries. Linda, on the other hand, felt torn between being a mother and a wife. She had always been the nurturer, the one who soothed their children's worries and made sacrifices for their happiness. But in doing so, she wondered, was she sacrificing too much of her marriage? One evening, after another exhausting day, Mark came home to find Linda sitting at the kitchen table, staring at their checkbook. "We can't keep doing this," he said, dropping his briefcase. Linda sighed. "So what do we do? Let them struggle? Let them fail?" Mark hesitated. Maybe that's what they need. To struggle a little. To learn. We worked so hard when we were their age. We didn't have anyone to catch us every time we fell. Linda wiped a tear from her cheek. "I just don't want to see them suffer." Mark walked over and took her hands. "Neither do I, but we also can't keep sacrificing our future. We deserve a life too, Linda." The next morning, Linda and Mark sat down with Emily and Jason for a difficult conversation. "We love you both," Linda began, "and we know times are tough, but your dad and I are at a point where we need to focus on our future too." Mark nodded. "We're happy to help when we can, but it can't be like this anymore. You both need to start standing on your own feet." At first, their children resisted. Jason insisted he just needed a little more time, while Emily looked hurt as if they were abandoning her. But as the conversation continued, something shifted. "We're not doing this because we don't love you," Linda said gently. "We're doing this because we do." A week later, Jason took on extra shifts, finally committing to financial independence. Emily downsized her apartment, taking a job that wasn't her dream, but gave her stability. It wasn't easy, but slowly the burden on Mark and Linda began to lift. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Mark reached for Linda's hand. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like we can breathe," he said. Linda smiled. "And maybe we can finally start thinking about us again." Mark chuckled. "How about that trip we always talked about? Italy?" Linda laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. Now that sounds like a plan. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they knew the road ahead would still have challenges. But for the first time in years, they felt like they were walking it together. Not just as parents, but as partners. Even after setting financial boundaries, Mark and Linda wrestled with guilt. Linda often found herself questioning whether they were being too harsh. Mark, despite his frustration, felt the pang of guilt when Jason called, sounding exhausted from his double shift. One evening, Linda admitted, "I feel like a bad mother." Mark took a deep breath. "You're not. But we have to remember, if we keep saving them from struggles, they'll never learn how to stand on their own." This became a turning point for Linda, helping her see that real love sometimes meant letting go. As their children became more independent, Mark and Linda faced another unexpected challenge, rediscovering themselves. For years, their conversations had revolved around the kids. Now, with fewer financial concerns and more free time, they realized they had drifted apart. Dinners were quiet, and the house felt empty. One evening, Mark asked, "What did we even talk about before, kids?" Linda laughed. "I think it was about all the things we were going to do once the kids were grown. So, maybe it's time to start," Mark suggested with a hopeful smile. This moment reignited a spark between them, pushing them to focus on their own happiness again. As they adjusted their lifestyle, Mark and Linda also explored ways to improve their finances. Mark picked up part-time consulting work, not out of necessity, but to fund their dreams. Linda turned her love for gardening into a small side business, selling homegrown produce at a local market. To their surprise, these small changes not only eased their financial worries, but also gave them a new sense of purpose outside of parenting. "I never thought I'd enjoy selling vegetables," Linda said one morning. Mark grinned. "And I never thought I'd enjoy not working 60 hours a week." It was a reminder that change, even in midlife, could lead to unexpected joy. While setting financial boundaries was necessary, Mark and Linda still wanted to support their children emotionally. They made an effort to check in regularly, offering guidance instead of handouts. When Emily finally landed a stable job, she called, excitedly sharing the news. "I did it on my own," she said, pride in her voice. Jason, too, became more responsible, learning to manage his money better. One evening, as Mark and Linda sat on their porch, Linda smiled. "Our kids are finally standing on their own," she said. Mark took her hand. "And so are we." With financial stress behind them and a renewed connection, they embraced this new phase of life, one where they were not just parents, but partners rediscovering each other again. These additional insights further enriched the story, making it even more engaging for an audience of older adults who may be navigating similar challenges in their own lives.